And now, it's time for your Low Country Real Estate Market Update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston, and welcome to another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. Gosh, 11 years I've been on this program, helping you guys better understand the real estate market, just the housing market in general, not just in Charleston, South Carolina, but I share information with you, the listener, the watcher, if you're watching this on YouTube or any of the other channels that we broadcast this show on, to help you guys better understand the process, right? There's a lot of moving parts. Things are ever changing in the world of real estate. And so I help you become an informed consumer so that when it comes time for you to buy a home, sell a home, invest in real estate, maybe you want to have your property managed by somebody, you know the right questions to ask, right? You know how to prepare yourself for a successful transaction. So we've got some great information to share with you guys today. As you guys can probably tell, those of you that are listening that are here in Charleston, surprise, surprise, we are the number one most popular state to move to as of last year. So we've got a bunch of folks that have, over the past several years, migrated from different parts of the country, and they've really targeted kind of the South Atlantic region of our country. They're looking at states like South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Florida. Now, why, right? The cost of living in these states in relation to where they're moving from is low, right? But is usually the case with increased popularity, and population can create higher prices. We have certainly seen our fair share of that here in Charleston, and that continues even as this market seems and feels slow, right? So I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about how we as just a location, as a population, are preparing from an infrastructure perspective for all of these folks that are moving to the area. I want to talk about how it's impacted our local real estate market. We've got a lot more people moving in than moving out. So as we continue to grow, what plans are in place to prepare for that? Are we prepared? So I want to talk about that a little bit on the show, and then here we are. We've got the spring market really starting to heat up, and a lot of folks are now online. They're looking at where they want to move next. They're starting to put some plans in place. And so I want to talk today about the process of selling a home, buying another, how we go about that. There are a few different ways that we can approach that process, and it doesn't always have to be, hey, I need to go and find a property first, and then once I find it, I can make an offer, contingent upon listing and accepting an offer and ultimately selling my home because I need the proceeds in order to purchase that new home. I want to give you guys a few different ideas, a few different scenarios. And for those of you that are thinking about making a move, maybe between the time when school is out and then school begins, which is what a lot of folks try to plan, there are some things you can start doing now to prepare for that process. And so I want to talk about that. Now, if you guys want to reach out to me at any point in time, you'd like to have a discussion about your real estate needs, whether it's buying a home, selling a home, investing in real estate. Believe it or not, we are still seeing some good deals out there. We've got folks that are flipping multiple properties a month. So they're out there. They're tougher to find. Don't get me wrong, but they're tougher to find. And then, of course, we've got a property management company. So if you own a rental property, we'd like to talk with you about how we've structured our company to really maximize your cash flow, which is what it's all about when you've got an investment property. So anything that I can do to help you guys, maybe you need a good recommendation for a contractor, or you just need somebody to bounce some ideas off of. My number is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. You can go to our website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or you can send me an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. And of course, you know that we've also got a podcast. We put all these videos on YouTube. We've got close to 1,000 now. So if you just Google the Brian Beatty team, you'll find plenty of content for whatever it is you're looking for specifically. So let's get into this. Let's talk about this migration and moving report that movebuddha.com did. And South Carolina is the most popular state to move to as of last year. For every 100 people that move out of the state, 211 people move in, which is, we're more than doubling our population. Some areas are even higher than that, and we'll get to that in just a second. But it also, our state in general has the highest net searches per capita of all states, meaning it's not just what happened in 2023, but also what consumer behavior leads us to believe is going to happen. This is a trend that is, I don't think we've got an end in sight on this. Now, if you look at individual cities, the number one city to move to was the Villages in Florida, which is a very famous retirement community. And there are some things that I could say about that, but won't. But for those of you that know anything about the Villages, there's another stat that comes along with that's not very PC to talk about on radio. But anywho, number 2 is Myrtle Beach. Number 3 is Asheville. Number 4 is Ocala, Florida. And then number 5 out of every city in the nation right now is Summerville, South Carolina. In Summerville, 233 people move in for every 100 people that move out. The area is growing like crazy. And Summerville's a big place. It's, I think, 21 square miles, 22 square miles. It's got a lot of space, and there's a lot of opportunity for builders to continue to put up new inventory at relatively low prices in comparison to, of course, other areas of Charleston, and have it still be a reasonable commute to plenty of areas to work. Now, obviously, there are some areas, especially depending upon how deep in Summerville you get, where, if you're working in, let's say, downtown Charleston, peak rush hour, you're in the car for an hour plus easy, sometimes 2, which, traffic is relative. I get it. For the folks that have lived here for a long time, decades, I've been here for 22 years. Traffic obviously has gotten much worse as our population has grown. Has the infrastructure really changed enough to support it? Yes and no. We'll get to that in a minute, but I want to help you guys just kind of better understand what's happening to our area. Now, where are people moving here from is a question I get asked a lot. The number 1 area people are moving from is Washington, D.C. Number 2 is New York. Number 3 is Boston. Number 4 is Chicago. Number 5 is L.A. 6 is Seattle. 7 is Atlanta. 8 is Philly. 9 is Charlotte. And 10 is San Diego. Pretty widespread, right? There's a lot of folks moving here for a lot of different reasons. And again, for us that live here locally, have lived here locally, that still, get sticker shock when they see properties that hit the market and then sell at a certain price. You're like, wow, I can't believe that property sold for that price in that amount of time. It doesn't really matter, it seems, what we do in terms of trying to put new inventory on the market, which is up, by the way. We're going to get to that in a minute too. But demand is just continuing to absorb this gain, these temporary gains that we're seeing in homes being put for sale on the market. Now, where are people going to if they're going to leave Charleston? This is interesting. These are the top 10. Number 1 is Columbia. Number 2 is Asheville. Number 3 is Greenville. 4 is Hilton Head. 5 is Myrtle Beach. 6 is Jacksonville. 7 is Boone, North Carolina. 8 Greenville, North Carolina. 9 is Forest City, North Carolina. And 10 is Sumter, South Carolina. South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. They're staying pretty close, right? And if you look at the cost of real estate and the cost of just housing, ownership, relative to these areas that they're moving from, D.C., New York, Boston, Chicago, L.A., they're selling their home and they're moving here with more than likely a ton of cash in their hand because they've ridden that appreciation wave just like we have. Maybe it hasn't been quite as severe over the past several years because a lot of people are moving out rather than moving in. But still, we are selling properties to folks from all over the country. And this information is it supports that. But what has that done to our local market? How are we keeping up with infrastructure? What about our workforce? What about our quality of life? Are we financially stable? What in the world are we going to do about all of this flooding in downtown Charleston? We've got some things that we need to address, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Pretty action-packed show for you guys today. But again, if you want to reach out to me, if you have questions about the market, you're looking to hire a top real estate agent. I've sold 1,500 homes, about $1 billion worth of real estate here locally. So certainly qualified to help you with your property. Would love the opportunity to discuss that, or just be of general help too if you've got a general question. But if you want to reach out to me, the number to call or text is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Again, I'm your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks again for joining me as we talk about what's happening with regard to our little slice of the world, Charleston, South Carolina. We've talked a lot about people moving here from other states. We've got our state, South Carolina, as being the number one state that people are not only moving to as of last year, but if you look at the behavioral data on where people are searching for real estate the most, we're top of the list too. So Somerville being the number 5 city in the country for folks to move into. So, our market is continuing to expand. And this is part of the challenge with regard to, I guess, helping folks understand our market, because there are so many different pockets of real estate and types of real estate in Charleston that when we review very generalized stats, yes, it's interesting. Yes, it's informative, but obviously not nearly as informative as what would happen in your specific area if you were going to sell a home, or what should you expect as a buyer if you're going to buy a home in one of these areas. So that's what I want to talk about for the next maybe 10 minutes or so, is just what the impact has been to our local real estate market from a pricing perspective. What are we seeing in terms of consumer behavior? What's happening with inventory? Are we starting to balance? Are things becoming more affordable, less affordable? Where are we? So that's what we're going to chat about. Now, if at any point in time you guys are like, I'd like to understand what's happening with regard to my home, I will tell you that this time of year, kind of March and April, is when we are doing as a team probably 20 to 25 what we call CMAs a day, comparative market analysis. So we've got all these past clients that we check in with. We help them understand what their home is currently worth, not for anything other than to just give them an update on where their home sits, because some of these online tools are just, frankly, completely unreliable. Zillow thinks my home is about 26% less than what my home is actually worth. And so, these online tool estimators, they can give you a general sense, but they're just not accurate. They're not reliable. Please, you can, I guess, you explore some curiosity about what your home is worth, but do not rely on these online estimators to tell you what your home is worth, because they don't know anything about the condition of your home. They don't know anything about the upgrade of your home or any of the other properties that have sold. It also doesn't take into account whether there were any concessions at closing costs, repairs, so on and so forth. There's a lot that goes into this. So rely on someone like me to help you better understand what your home is worth. And give me a call if you'd like, 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065, or listingsincharleston.com is our website, listingsincharleston.com. So let's talk what's going on here in our local market. I'm going to read some generalized stats, and then I'm going to kind of dig a little deeper into some of these things. So typically what we see this time of year is we see a nice spike in inventory, right? March, April, May is when we put a bunch of properties on the market based on seasonal adjustments for our market. So if you look at year to date compared to this time last year, with the understanding that last year was a tough year, we've seen almost a 30% increase in new listings hit the market year to date compared to this time last year. In fact, in February of last year, we put about a little under 1,500 properties on the market. Well, February last month, we put 1,999, right? It's a 36% increase in homes being listed for sale. Here's another interesting status. All right, well, we're putting properties on the market, but are they selling? How quickly are they selling? At what percentage of their asking price are they selling? We can obviously draw some conclusions from that as well. So if you look at pending sales, year to date, we're up 11%. If you look at February of last year compared to last month, we're up 12.5%. Closings are up 8.5% year to date. We've sold about 180 more homes than we have this time last year. Last year at this time, it was taking about 43 days to sell a home. Now it's taking 41, right? Not a huge change there. But with the increase in inventory and this kind of hope that I think a lot of people have that we're going to return to normalcy, right? This normal balanced market where, properties are supposed to appreciate, but kind of in line with, inflation, that 3-ish% per year. Well, in order for that to happen, we have to have a lot more homes hit the market. We need to substantially increase our inventory and substantially decrease the rate at which these properties are going under contract. And so that's why we use a measurement tool called months supply of inventory. And I know some of you really like to geek out like me on data. I'm a data guy. I'm well researched. For those of you that have listened to this show, you know that I know this market. You know I know what I'm talking about. But a month supply of inventory is basically what we use to say, all right, well, is there an oversupply or undersupply of homes, or is it a balanced market? The more supply there is, and the lower or the slower the pace at which these properties go under contract, the more buyer's market we're in. We've not seen a buyer's market for quite a long time, basically 10 years at this point. We've been in a seller's market. And so month supply of inventory, if you're looking at the stats and you're looking at like percentage increases, last month compared to February in 2023, month supply of inventory is up almost 30%. Now that number sounds big. In reality, what's happened is we went from 1.7 months supply to 2.2. I mean, for the most part, it remained unchanged. Now, we are seeing more homes on the market. It's just that we're absorbing them, right? The demand is still higher than the supply. And so, this time last year, we had 2,600 homes on the market and some change. Now we've got 3,200 homes on the market. So that's about a 20% increase in properties that are available for sale. But if we look at the housing affordability index, which is really the name of the game, and that's what has sidelined so many people, you've got property values that are continuing to go up. You've got interest rates that can't seem to make up their mind. It seems like every time we get down into the 6s, they go to the 7s again, which is basically where they are now. And there are some programs out there where we can get you interest rates substantially less. I mean, I've still seen closings that were in the 3 to 6% range. There's assumable mortgages. There's interest rate buy downs. There's, builders that have incentives. So don't think that you are completely sidelined because interest rates are at 7%. There are options. You just have to understand what they are and know where to look, or work with somebody like me that knows where they are already. But I want to talk for just a second about pending sales, right? These properties that are going under contract, right? They've accepted an offer. And I told you that pending sales year to date is up 11%. But if you look at last month compared to February of last year, well, let's just get really clear on this statistical comparison, right? So pending sales in February of 2024 compared to February of 2023 was up 12.4%. But let's break that down by price range, shall we? Good, let's do it. All right, so compared to this February of last year, 150 grand and below, it's down 27%. 150 to 250, down 29%. 250 to 350, down 6.5%. Then you start to see this swing, right? 350 to 500 is down 0.4%. 500 to 750 is down 2%. 750 to a million, it's up 5%. Million plus, it's up 13% almost. Now, one might look at that and say, well, gosh, why are these low-priced properties not selling as much as they used to? That's not what you should draw from this data, in my opinion, because that's not the case. Almost anything we put on the market under $500,000 is gone like that. The challenge is there's hardly anything for sale in those price ranges anymore because of the appreciation we've seen in our market. There are less properties going under contract because there are literally less of them. So when we're looking at this data and you're working with real estate agents to identify, all right, how much should I sell this home for? What sort of market dynamics do I need to take into consideration to try and, if you think about the both ends of the spectrum, one is I need to sell fast, right? Something has happened in my life. I've got to go. I have to sell my house now. Very few people are in that position. The other end of the spectrum, of course, is, I'd sell, not in a rush to sell. Nothing's pushing me out the door. There's no massive sense of urgency. So if I'm going to sell, it's got to be worth my while. If I'm going to leave this really low interest rate, I've got to get a great deal on selling my home. And let me tell you guys a little secret. There is a way to sell your home for top dollar and get a good deal on something to buy. A lot of folks, I think, have felt over the past few years that, hey, I might get a great deal on selling my home, but then I've got to enter the market and buy something, and I'm going to get beaten up, just as much as the buyer was for my house when they bought it because I didn't budge an inch. That's not the case. I'm telling you, there are plenty of ways for buyers to get good deals on real estate right now. Again, you just have to know where to look. You have to know which strategies to use. And in my opinion, which is a biased opinion, I get it. I get it. But the person that you work with has a lot to do with this. Their experience has a lot to do with this. What they do on a day-to-day basis and the services that they offer, aside from just facilitating a transaction, are huge. I mean, overwhelmingly huge in terms of what some agents can bring to the table versus what others can bring to the table. And so if you're thinking of making a move, I really implore you to have a conversation with my team because we're doing some things that I think have just worked really well for our clients. We've streamlined the process. We've cut costs where we can. We've passed those savings on to you guys. We've got listing commissions as low as 2.4%. Of course, it goes up from there depending upon the level of service that you want. But if you're concerned about paying an arm and a leg for commission, we have options for you. If you're concerned about selling your home but you don't know where to go, or you feel you're going to have to pay top dollar for the home that you buy, we have options for you. Reach out. I'll explain in greater detail. My number is 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065. Check out our website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. I always like to take a moment and just say that I appreciate you guys that listen to the show. You rely on the information within it to help shape your understanding of our real estate market and the process associated with buying or selling or investing in real estate or hiring a property manager or hiring a contractor or really just anything housing related. I appreciate those of you that listen, those of you that reach out. We are here as a resource. We're happy to help. It doesn't obviously have to have some sort of business opportunity attached to it. We just want to be a resource for you guys first and foremost. And then, of course, if you're thinking of transacting in real estate, we'd love the opportunity to be interviewed to see if we might be the right fit for you. My number, if you'd like to reach out to me personally, it goes right to me, is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Or you can go to our website, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or you can send me an email, brian@brianbeattyteam.com. We're on YouTube. Gosh, we're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, just, any of these mediums that you use to view information or view content, we're there. So appreciate those of you that check us out there as well. All right, so I want to talk for just a little bit about this massive problem we have with flooding, especially in downtown Charleston. But I experience it too as someone that lives in Mount Pleasant. So last week, we had this massive amount of water in downtown Charleston, which was a combination of a high tide and just several inches of rainfall, which typically equates to several feet of standing water. It's a major issue for everyone in downtown Charleston, especially in flood-prone areas. But it's really spread to just multiple areas of the low country, and it just seems like it's getting worse. Again, as somebody that's lived here for 22 years, there have been times, of course, with really bad storms where we've seen flooding in downtown Charleston, and we've just seen some severe weather. But it seems like it's becoming more and more normal for our city to flood. And the challenge is, even though we are the number one state to move to in the country, and we're the number one most targeted state from an online search perspective, right? So if we're looking at consumer behavior, we expect that to continue. With social media, every time we've got one of these floods, it's all over social media. Obviously, it's not really impacting people's decisions to move here, but it is impacting individual property owners, tenants. It puts real estate agents in a precarious situation because, look, we've got to tell the truth when someone asks us, hey, does this area flood? Or, hey, has this home experienced any issues as a result of flooding or water or fire or smoke? It's a specific question that is asked of every seller that sells their property, because when you list the property for sale, and this is what for sale by owners miss all the time, and it can result in massive lawsuits. So if you're a for sale by owner, please be careful. Please consult with somebody, even if you're going to do it on your own, on the proper precautions to take, because there's a document that you have to fill out called a property condition disclosure statement. It's a requirement. And one of the questions it asks is, has there been any, problems caused by fire, smoke, or water? You've got to disclose what some of these issues have been. And for some of these properties in downtown Charleston, frankly, a lot of them, they're kind of being very vague with regard to what those issues are. And the last thing you want as a homeowner is to sell your home to somebody that's not from this area. Because again, remember, the people that are moving here from DC, New York, Boston, Chicago, and LA, in that order, top 5. And a lot of these folks are viewing properties sight unseen. They're finding some random agent they found online. Who knows whether they actually have, area specific knowledge of that particular property. You could be having an agent that specializes in Somerville showing a property in downtown Charleston that's just not aware of the flood patterns, right? Have somebody buy a house virtually, the seller isn't, I guess, being as honest as they should with regard to what's on the property condition disclosure statement as it relates to flooding and water damage. And then the next thing you know, you got this big lawsuit on your hands. And so it is a problem, right? The city has to address this issue. And so there's short-term solutions, there's long-term solutions. In the short term, the active flooding mitigation plan establishes proactive steps for the city to prepare for rainy day flooding that include opening parking garages, installing temporary pumps, lowering the lakes in downtown Charleston, closing flood-prone streets, maybe enforcing a lower speed limit, maintaining storm drains, and notifying residents during severe weather. And just as a quick example, the folks that are driving really fast through these flood-prone areas are causing real damage to properties. Please be responsible when you're driving downtown and it's flooding, because it's the wakes that are pushing water into these properties. It's just causing massive issues. So be respectful. But anyways, this is, Mayor Cogswell said that what happened on Saturday was a failure, quote unquote. We need to do a better job as a city in preparing residents for emergency situations. So his active flood mitigation plan is going to be initiated a day or two before a severe weather event. And, according to the article that I read on ABC and the interview, it's the first plan officially put in place for rainy day flooding. In reality, plans have been in place for the past at least 10 years. It's just that this is a way to organize everything. So in the short term, yeah, we've got some solutions. Obviously, the question is, where is the water going to go? Another big challenge I see that needs to be enforced are all of these storm drains. We're looking at possibly managing several buildings in downtown Charleston, and last weekend they had water that was, 3 feet higher. I mean, people were getting out of their cars or going to their cars and they're in water above their knees. Every time this area floods, we've got to replace wood. We've got to replace stairs. We've got to look underneath the condos to determine, is there any, fungi? Is there mold? Was there damage that occurred? Is there debris that is now underneath the crawl space? What's happened to the vapor barriers? Is there standing water? I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. And when you look at some of these storm drains, they are packed with trash and debris. So that's something that I think the city can do is make sure that the water is able to drain appropriately. But if you look at the long term, this is what I found to be interesting, and you guys can go online and you can find this. This is the city of Charleston's plan for 2024 to 2027. And if you look at their infrastructure, they've laid it out. I think it's about a 10-page document. But if you look specifically at infrastructure, they've got a few different goals and some strategies associated with those goals. And so I'm going to read from their website now. But as it relates to infrastructure, one of their goals is to, quote, reduce the vulnerability of flood hazards to protect the life, health, safety, and welfare of the community's residents and visitors. And so the first strategy that they want to employ, strategy A, is strengthen local building code regulations to include reduce residential and commercial flooding in designated zones through higher standards of construction requirements and grant projects, reduce or prohibit the use of fill to elevate buildings and land by limiting the height of fill or prohibiting the use of fill in the floodplain altogether, and apply stricter limitations on use of enclosed areas built below flood elevations. Some of it makes sense, but it sure does sound like they just want to make it harder on us. Strategy B is to review and update as needed countywide plans to include a comprehensive plan, a zoning and land development regulational plan, hazard mitigation plan, climate action plan, which is quote unquote in development. And then strategy C is to develop a capital improvement program through stormwater for drainage projects that identifies the needs, assets, level of service needed, and cost share with participating municipalities. And so I read this and I just kind of wonder, like, why don't we have these plans already in place? Why aren't we further along? Why are we so disorganized? Why can't we get it together and start addressing some of these solutions? It sounds like a lot of them are, well, we need to create the plan. Where has it been? Let's get it done. We've got major issues that are impacting residents of downtown Charleston, tenants of downtown Charleston, visitors. It's damaging property. We all know the issue. And I think that a lot of people, obviously, that are working on solutions are acutely aware of the issue, because you go to one of these town hall meetings in downtown Charleston and it is brutal. I mean, it's rough. They are rough on officials. And so on one hand, I feel for you. On the other hand, let's speed it up. Let's get it going, right? Let's get it done. I'm very much so a get it done kind of guy. And so that's what they have planned in the short term and in the long term. I encourage you to participate in this. I encourage you to let your voice be heard. I encourage you to create accountability, which is really the main issue in my mind, is the accountability. We can create plans. We can talk about what we want to do. We can update what should be done, but is it being done? Yes or no? So I tell you what, when we come back with the little bit of time we have left, I do want to talk for just a little bit about the process of selling a home and buying another, because we're just right in that season of the market right now, where a lot of people are going to start listing their homes like they kind of already have. They're going to plan their move, whether in-state or out of state. Now, I just want to talk about a few options that you might have, rather than just having to go to the seller of a home and say, hey, I love it. I will pay you absolute top dollar if you just give me some time to put my home on the market and sell it. There are real ways of saving money here, guys, but it takes a plan, and it takes somebody that understands these moving parts and has done a lot of it. So if you'd like to reach out to me, if you're in that boat right now, my number, 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065, or listingsinCharleston.com. listingsincharleston.com is my website. Listingsincharleston.com or 843-800-0065, call or text. We've got this interesting thing that happens right around this time of year where we start to see this big spike in online traffic, right? In inquiries and people that are starting to lay the groundwork for their upcoming move here in the next month to few months. And everybody wants to save money in the process. Everybody's always looking for ways to make this process easier, less expensive, less stressful, as they should. I will say, however, that a lot of folks miss certain key points in the process of selling a home and buying another that cost them money. And it's one of those things where from a consumer perspective, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that you could have saved some money in these different areas throughout the process. That's what this show is for. That is what I am here for, is to help educate you guys so that you can save some money, so that you can get a better deal, so that you can work with somebody that understands how to get you from point A to point B as logistically feasibly as possible with the least amount of stress possible. I really am passionate about this one because selling a home and buying another, and just that process of moving from point A to point B, I have seen be an absolute nightmare for certain people. And the preparation that goes into this is absolutely key. Now, I will say that I absolutely pride myself in helping people with this particular type of transaction. Of course, we help anybody, right? And we help people buy, we help people sell, we help people invest, we manage properties, whatever. This part, though, moving your family from one location to another can be disastrous if you're working with somebody that just doesn't understand all the moving parts well enough to be able to say, hey, here is your best shot. These are the ways, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that we can save money throughout this process and make things easier on you. So I implore you, if you're thinking about making a move, to give me a call so that I can at least explain to you what we do and how we do it differently, just to see if it even makes sense to work together. 843-800-0065 is my number. 843-800-0065 or listingsincharleston.com. Now, the traditional, I think, thought process for people that are going through this is, all right, well, there's no sense in getting ahead of myself. There's no point in going through the motions of maybe putting my home on the market if I don't even know where I'm going to move. Right? And logically, that makes sense. Emotionally, that makes sense. And so what you do is you go out and you find a property and you say, oh gosh, this one's perfect. I love this one. I want to make an offer. Do you think we can, get it for less? Do you think that how negotiable do you think the seller is? Every once in a while in this market, once in a blue moon, frankly, you'll find somebody that is in a position where they've got a home that has sat on the market for an extended period of time. Maybe it's price related, maybe it's condition related, maybe it's got a funky floor plan, who knows? But that's fairly rare. They're out there, but it's a rarity. So what will happen is you'll go and you'll identify this property, you'll try and negotiate with the seller to buy it for less, or maybe have them pay some of your closing costs, so you're reducing the cash needed to bring to the table to buy the property. And you're also asking them to say, hey, well, I love your home and we're gonna buy it if you'll give us time to then prepare our home for sale and put it on the market, and then go through all the showings and then negotiate a deal and then get through the home inspection and the appraisal and the termite inspection and wait for the buyer to get financing. And then when they close, then I can buy your house. That's a lot to put a seller through if they feel like if it's not worth it to them. So I want folks to understand that the idea of trying to beat up a seller and get a really, really good deal on price and terms in this market is incredibly challenging. Those are unicorns, okay? What I prefer for people to do, if they're planning on moving, if they're saying to themselves, if the right property came along, yeah, I would buy it. I would go through that process. In fact, I'd even make it worth the seller's while. I'd pay top dollar for that house. You don't have to do that if you just take some time and prepare for this process and talk with a real estate agent that can offer you some unique solutions. What are those solutions? Well, number one, when you work with a high caliber team, they are out there all day, every day, talking to people, receiving leads, doing open houses, doing the work to grow their pipeline and to just, real estate's a contact sport, right? So you find a high caliber agent with a high caliber team and people that are actually working, you find opportunity. So the first thing you can do is you can have that agent come over to your house and say, all right, well, if there are things that I need to do to prepare my home for sale, what are those things? Then rely on the contractors that agent has to save you some money. Or at least get quotes so you know how much those things are going to cost so the buyer doesn't use it against you when you list your home for sale. Another thing you can do is you can hire that agent to market your home internally to their database and to any other agent in their brokerage. It doesn't go on the MLS. It's not publicly available. The days on market is non-existent because it's not publicly listed for sale. But if we find a buyer that wants to buy your house and they've got a flexible time frame and you have a flexible time frame in identifying your next home, well, then we've just created a very low stress environment for you to sell your home and buy another and go to the seller of the home you want to buy and say, hey, I've got a deal lined up already. All we have to do is, get through the inspection and close. It'll be a lot easier than you taking the risk of me putting my home on the market, maybe overpricing it. Maybe the agent I'm working with is just kind of telling me what I want to hear and they're not, eyes on the prize listing and selling it for the most money possible. There's so many different avenues here that you can take to facilitate and streamline this process and save a bunch of money on the way. That's just one example of many. And I don't want to give it all away on the air, but I will come back to this. And so if you'd like to talk about this process in greater detail, you're thinking of selling a home and buying another, let's talk about what your options are. My number is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Or listingsincharleston.com is our website. Thanks a lot, guys. You enjoy your weekend, and thanks for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065.